Hello, I'm Paul Taillon, and this is the Strategic Thinkers series. Today I have the pleasure of speaking to Khanjan Desai, Chief Executive Officer of Alchemy, a materials science company with operations in the automotive and defense sectors. Khanjan, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Paul, today. I really appreciate it. The CEO and co-founder of Alchemy, my background is in nanotechnology engineering from the University of Waterloo. While I was there, I did some work at Harvard Medical School doing some cancer research microfluidics research for cancer survivors. Um, Enjoyed the technical parts of it, but did not really enjoy all of I suppose, the politics that's involved in being successful in that world. So I ended up going and spending some time doing marketing and growth marketing at Facebook in San Francisco for some time. Finished my degree, decided to start this company, and that's what I've really been working on since.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for that. In conflicts like the Russia-Ukrainian war, we've seen how cheap drones and advanced sensors have made thermo detection nearly unavoidable on the battlefield. Can you help paint a picture of why thermal visibility has become such a critical vulnerability and how it's changing the way modern forces think about concealment and survivability?
Absolutely. If we look back at what the first couple of decades of war were for NATO and its allies, the biggest threat used to be poorly armed militia or terrorist organizations and really the focus was on things like IEDs and whatnot. But over the last 5 or 6 years, there's been a dramatic shift. Now we're concerned about near-peer adversaries with significantly advanced industrial bases. And so what we're seeing, especially out of the Russo-Ukrainian war front over the last little over 3 years now, is that it's become incredibly easy and incredibly cheap to put a thermal camera on a drone and to attach an armed payload to it. It's gotten so challenging, especially as a result of this, that I've heard statistics like roughly 98% of fatalities on that war front right now are through indirect fire. Obviously, that changes depending on where on the war front you are, but even the area of denial along the war front is almost 20 kilometers deep, where there is a loitering munition in the sky that can pick you up through a variety of signatures, including thermal, and come get you pretty quickly. And so when we put this in the context of NATO as well as Canada, first of all, our True North Strong and Free policy states the Arctic is our first priority. Well, you've got a really cold background. So when you're operating in the cold background, your thermal signature is going to stand out pretty easily. So that is something that for Canada, I think it has to become a really important priority and really high priority. But at the same point as well, the thermal world is incredibly unforgiving. If I were to lean against a tree within a second, the tree would have warmed up, and so you would be able to see a hot spot on that tree. If we're walking around in the Arctic, the heat from our body can transfer over and leave trails that can be used to see where you were and follow you to where you are. Every piece of gear that you handle, touch, will emit thermal signature if it's not concealed properly. So unlike the visible spectrum and even the near infrared spectrum, deeper into the thermal infrared spectrum, it is so easy for you to get detected. And as a result, it's become a huge vulnerability. So everywhere we look, every NATO country right now is stating that, you're seeing somewhere in the top three priorities for soldier systems, thermal signature management is listed in those top three.
Could you walk us through how Crypsis Class works at a high level without giving away proprietary details? And what differentiates it from existing solutions in the security disruptive technology domain?
I mean, there have been a variety of technologies out there and materials out there that we know will hide a person's thermal signature. The simplest being aluminum foil. I could wrap myself in aluminum foil and you won't see my heat signature, but you will obviously see me in an aluminum foil walking around. And so what we've been able to do is sort of take that concept, but bring it down to a nanoparticle level and construct a nanoparticle-based pigment that will prevent your heat signature from being leaked, but also mimic the environment around you to blend you into the environment within the thermal spectrum. By all means, it's not the Harry Potter cloak, that we all sort of, watched in those movies, but it gets pretty close to it in the sense that during the daytime, we've run some trials with the Canadian DRDC where the ground temperature was close to 26, 28 degrees Celsius, and it was starting to blend into the environment and look warmer. And similarly, at nighttime, when the ground temperature was closer to 0 degrees Celsius, it was starting to again blend into that environment and lower its temperature. So we're not just blocking your thermal signature from being leaked, we're also being able to mimic the environment around you to give you a sort of a higher degree of protection as a soldier. But because it's an additive or a pigment, you're not just limited to putting it into textiles. You can put it into window films. You can put it into vehicle paints and spray paints and so on. So ultimately, with Crypsis Class, what we've been able to create is a capability that can be integrated into a variety of platforms within the defense and security world.
Beyond the technical features, what are the operational and strategic implications of deploying Crypsis Class, for example, in defense, national security, or allied partnered environments?
Yeah, I think when we think about war, and going back to your earlier question about the Russo-Ukrainian war front, one of the things we are seeing is that war front, things aren't moving very fast anymore. Part of it is largely because of the area of denial that's being created by low-cost drones that are using thermal detection to deny any operations within that 20 kilometers range of the border. And so, as a whole, mobility is really challenged if we're starting to think about broad scale military elements like army and whatnot in sort of the conventional battlefield. Similarly, if we start thinking about special operations forces, the risk of detection and the threat of detection is now incredibly high. And so when we start thinking about strategic and operational advantages that any modern military wants to have, restoring mobility is something that's become a critical piece to this. If you're going to get detected easily, if the battlefield is rendered transparent by the thermal infrared detection technologies, your mobility is challenged and pretty much zeroed out. So by being able to bring technologies that can evade detection, we can restore mobility and restore a critical advantage for NATO and Canada. And especially if you're starting to think about the Arctic as well, you can't be easily spotted in your own backyard. So this is where, again, for Canada, it becomes an important aspect as well because of the priority that we are placing on the Arctic.
Can you share a bit about how this technology evolved from material science research to deployable prototypes and what key breakthroughs made it viable?
Yeah, we came across this technology when we were building a anti-frost coating for our automotive business, actually, where we recognized that this nanoparticle and its peers had the capability of being transparent in visible light, but interact with the thermal infrared spectrum. And going back to 2020, we saw an RFP come out of the Canadian DRDC Ideas program, actually, that we applied to. We must have, I think it must have been 6 or 9 months, and we had forgotten that we had applied to this. But we got an acceptance letter, and we were one of 7 companies or proposals at the time that were accepted to take the TRL-1 idea to the TRL-4 prototype. And in doing so, we ended up demonstrating that we were able to do something and deliver a performance level that nobody else was able to, especially when it came to textile-based integration. And so as a result, then we were also accepted into the DRDC Ideas Component 1B program, which is a larger contract for us to advance the technology to something that can be tested and validated in a field, which we completed successfully as well. And we delivered prototypes to DRDC, Val Cartier, who we worked with very closely. They helped inform the form, fit, and function and the development of our technology. And then ultimately also tested it in various different field environments, gave us all of that feedback, data, and so on to continue improving our technologies. So we're now at the stage where we're working through the last sort of third of the development to get it to full commercial readiness. but we've been very deeply supported by both DRDC Valcartier as well as the Director of Soldier Systems Procurement Management as well right now.
How do you test and validate performance in something as complex as thermal signature management? And what kind of metrics or testing environments matter most?
The answer is right now, nobody knows. And the reason is that to some extent, the specifications don't exist. This is such a new threat that we have faced that modern militaries, NATO, most of our allies, Canada as well, have not really spent a long amount of time trying to create the specifications and the requirements for thermal signature management. Um, so what you have to do is you kind of have to help create some of the requirements and the education as well. And it's a bit of an evolving landscape right now. As an example, when we were speaking with the U.S. Army Development Command Soldier System Center a few years ago, the request was, can you send us small 4x4 swatches? We'll test it out in the lab and so on. And very recently, a few months ago, I was speaking with them as well, and they said, well, we've completely shifted the way we're testing. We now actually go to the field first because we realize that the thermal environment is so complex. You could be 10 feet into the tree line at the edge of the tree line or 10 feet out, and that would be completely different signature or thermal backgrounds you need to conceal from. So it's no longer just about, where you are geographically. It's also what is the weather like that day. It is also what exactly are the tactics, training, and procedures you're giving to the operator so that they can use the solutions you're creating effectively. So the way we're tackling this is that we're taking what we can grab from existing mil spec standards when it comes to combat clots and other signature management technologies for the other parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. We're partnering with expert groups like the CTT group that really specializes in creating textile-based technologies, partnering up with DRDC Valcartier to help with the testing and sort of feedback loop on how things are performing, but also now starting to build and invest in our own testing suite. So we're looking to build out our own testing platforms with our own drones, with our own sensor suites, etc., and also bring in ex-military operators as well to inform the tactics, training procedures, as well as evaluation protocols of our own technology so that we can build the most refined technologies for our customers, but also give them the TTP that's needed to be able to use it successfully and safely in the field.
In complex ecosystems of legacy systems, vendors, partners, and making procurement decisions, how does Crypsis Class integrates or interface with existing infrastructure, and what challenges have you observed?
Yeah, I think the challenge that we have observed is probably one that a lot of people in this industry would relate with, which is that you usually need to work with the end customer. So in this case, it would be the user within the military to have them request the primes and so on to invest in developing this capability. So taking a step back, we're not trying to build a vehicle platform so that we can put a pigment in its paint. We're not trying to build a poncho or a winter jacket so that we can put our pigment into that clothing item. What we want to do is be a capability enabler and work with existing primes and subprimes to add our capability to their platforms. Because the reality is, if everything's going to be detected easily in the thermal signature, thermal infrared world, well, all of these suppliers are going to now start thinking about how does their platform work and perform against thermal detection. And so in doing so, you usually need to work with the end user, sort of create a pull for thermal signature management capabilities, and then work with the prime or in some cases a subprime to integrate our technology with them, so that their platform can now perform and meet the requirements of the thermal signature management world. And obviously, when I use the word requirements here, I recognize from your previous question, which is that the requirements don't exist as well. So we have to work with everyone involved in the whole ecosystem to help create requirements as well. So It's a very rapidly evolving piece. Our goal is really work with to the is to work with everyone who's already supplying to the defense and security world, help them have this add this capability to their platform, but also help create the right ecosystem and of requirements and specifications and TTP so that ultimately the user is best protected.
Many advanced defense materials face challenges of cost and manufacturability. How have you approached designing Crypsis Class for scalable, real-world use without compromising performance?
That's a very good question. The When we first started working with DRDC ideas, what we set as a guiding principle was that we needed to make sure the technology and the approach we were taking was going to be highly scalable. Um, because we wanted to avoid this exact pitfall. So when we even look at some of the alternatives that are out there for thermal signature management, they're taking incredibly complex manufacturing approaches that require laminating and producing different textiles and different materials, and basically require multi-step manufacturing processes that incredibly complicate the whole manufacturing process. And it ends up being a bit of a whack-a-mole process of you create a solution to solve problem A, but then now it creates problem B, so you have to create a solution to solve problem B, and then now you have a multi-part system that needs to be put together in order to create a solution. And we really wanted to make sure our solutions were simple and as a result scalable. So today, because our solution is effectively a pigment, what we're able to do is simply drop it into an existing step that happens in most textile manufacturing. We don't change the manufacturing process. We don't change the manufacturing parameters either. And so by doing so, all we're doing is really adding the cost of this one material. And as a result, what we're able to do is really make it a drop-in additive that can be incredibly scalable as far as the manufacturing process and its cost parameters go as well.
You began your company with a similar thesis on building a high-performing and affordable technology for the automotive industry. And as I understand it, you are currently looking at military applications for both land and aerial platforms. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, and so this idea of simple solutions, simple but effective, and cost, or rather highly scalable solutions, isn't really unique to our thermal signature management technology. It's rather a part of our company identity. And so here, what we've been able to do with ExoShield, what we did was we effectively created imagine a phone screen protector film, but built for the car's windshield. And this is because virtually every new vehicle that you can purchase today has incredibly expensive sensors that are mounted on the windshield that make replacing a windshield incredibly expensive. And so we now manufacture and export this technology and product to 56 countries worldwide. It's made here in Kitchener, Ontario. And while we were doing this, what we recognized was there were some customers who were buying our product who worked in the defense and security world, and they came to us and asked, "Hey, can we put this on, a variety of aviation platforms and land platforms for the military?" And so right now we are going through airworthiness testing for the C-130 Hercules as well as the Black Hawk helicopters as well, so that our technology can be used to protect the windows on those vehicle platforms.
Going back to stealth and detection, as sensing and AI-enhanced detection evolve, what do you think the next decade looks like for stealth technologies, and how can materials innovation stay ahead of those threats?
Yeah, that's the very challenging piece here, right? We're seeing such a rapid rate of innovation on the opposite end, which is on the detection end, where sensors are becoming higher and higher resolution. They're being paired with AI-based target recognition. And so that's going to make it incredibly challenging for anyone to generally evade detection. So what we have learned and are trying to do is really recognize and understand where is the detection technology going so that we're building for that as opposed to building for the detection today. Because by the time we are done building this solution, the detection technologies will have advanced, and so we'll be behind the curve again. And so instead of falling into that trap, what we're really focusing on is predict where you need to be and build for that. And that's very tricky, right? Because you can't test and qualify your solutions for where things are going to be. So you have to take a bit of a bet on where you think it's going to go and somewhat hope that you're right.
As we conclude, what are the 3 strategic takeaways you would leave for our audience members, those policymakers, industry leaders, academics, about the role of technologies like Crypsis Class in framing the next decade of security, innovation, and alliances?
I think what I would say is number one, the the battlefield is undergoing a significant transformation. Today, we are concerned about protecting humans, but as we see this transformation over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a significant shift towards drones, whether they're aerial or land-based. So we're talking about robotics as well, coming into the mix. So that is going to significantly shift what needs to be protected. It's not just humans, but it's also going to be assets that need to be protected. The second thing is for every piece of equipment that we use is going to need thermal signature management because this is a part of the electromagnetic spectrum that really compromises security more so than any other part right now. And so when we're starting to think about logistics vehicles, when we're starting to think about sensor towers, we're starting to think about soldier systems, drones, every single one of those items we need to start thinking about how does this thing perform in the thermal signature world, and how do we make sure we don't give ourselves away in that part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Um, and then finally, I think the last piece is going to be, which something Canada is doing a really great job of already, is really investing in innovation here within Canada to start really expanding and growing our defense industrial base. I think it's going to be really important for our national security to have technologies that are homegrown, so that we can become self-sustaining as a military as well.
Thank you very much for your valuable insights into nanotechnology and thermal mitigation. We look forward to having you back here for further discussions. Thank you again.
Thanks so much for having me, Paul.
Cheers. Bye now.